So I always just assume that we are going live. Let me just check over that. Oh, yeah, I think we are. So, let's just, it makes me say go live. Go live. There we go. So, welcome to this. What month are we in? We're still in January.
January.
Said February. We're nearly there. January edition, a kind of Unbound Live, where we have these author discussions where a group of the Unbound Press authors come together to talk about a particular theme, a particular subject. And this month we are talking about writing a book in 2021. And, you know, maybe if you've been feeling the call to write a book, hopefully we'll be able to inspire you and offer some kind of guidance or tips to help you on your way. So today I am joined by three of our amazing authors, Vikki, Sarah and Anna. And I think I'll just get you to introduce yourselves, if that's okay. Yeah, tell us who you are, and you're all at different stages of your kind of author journey. So where you are with that right now. Who's going to go first?
Yeah, I can go first.
Thanks, Sarah.
My name's Sarah Wheeler, and last year, it feels like ages ago, I swear time is just weird at the moment. I started writing my first book, and the first book is now complete and is in its last round with the editor. Yeah, so weird. I just listened to what you said, Vikki, about having someone get to know you really quickly, but you've only met them like not even in person, just like online a couple of times, and they've read your work. And it's like, oh, there's your heart that you just put on your page, and they've just read all over it. It's quite a weird feeling. So yeah, my first book is called Shadow and Rose, a soulful guide for women recovering from sexual violence. That'll be out on ebook as a self-published in hopefully March, she says. It just feels like that's where it's going. Let's see. Yeah, so looking forward to just getting that out in the world and kind of digesting that first experience. And book 2 is already in the works, like inside me, and is making its way onto paper in various notepads at the moment. So that's me.
And can you tell us a little bit about the book that you're working on for the Unbound Press as well?
Yeah, so it all started when I was writing the first book. It just felt like the first book was kind of spreading out tendrils, but I wanted to keep the focus purely on the recovery guide from sexual violence. But I kept coming into the topic of talking about oppression and patriarchy and the various different interpretations that people have of that, and the various different ways that different cultures, backgrounds, religions experience patriarchy, the different experiences, but there's often like an underpinning concern or kind of wound that women and men also, and people of different genders as well, walk around with this wound in patriarchy, which is I'm not enough. And that felt like a really raw thing as I was growing up, and had always related to myself since I was tiny, as far back as I can remember, as just like there was something wrong, like there was something fundamentally wrong with me, and that thing that was wrong was that I didn't match up to some invisible marker of what I should be or how I should be or what people wanted from me. And you know, the more you grow up and the kind of you get a bit more aware, and you unpick these things and you start to realize, like, geez, that's not just me, this is everybody. You know, everybody's walking around with this to different degrees, and it runs your life to different degrees as well. So yeah, the second book is going to be exploring like how collectively we came to be this way, but just kind of drawing on my own experiences and hopefully some insightful chats with people from different backgrounds and cultures as well, who are going to tell it from their perspective too. And then the healing part of it as well is like, okay, well, we know this now, but what now?
Love that. And actually that kind of not good enough piece is so relevant when it comes to writing a book as well, because it shows up
100%.
so much, like for all of us,
Yeah.
when we're in the process of writing a book and putting it out there. So can't wait. Can't wait to see Shadow and Rose, and also obviously the book.
Yeah,
the next
they're
book.
coming.
Thanks, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Who wants to go next?
I can go next.
Thanks, Vikki.
That sounds amazing, Sarah, and I love the title of your book, that Shadow and Rose. There's just something really, really beautiful about that. It feels like just those 3 words alone just speaks volumes. And so for me, I was just actually working out that this time last year, I hadn't even acknowledged this until just now, but this time last year I was in Costa Rica, just come to the end of a writing retreat. And it was on that writing retreat that I wrote the first chapter of my book. And I had already kind of been playing around with different ideas about it for kind of probably a year before that, and been sort of not quite clear on which direction it was going in. But on this retreat, I wrote the first chapter in one of our sessions, and that was it. I thought, yeah, I've got it. I found it. I found my thread, found my flow, and so I stayed in Costa Rica. The idea was to stay there for longer than I actually did, but I was there until the end of March, when all this happened, and I decided to come back, which hadn't been my original plan. I was going to carry on traveling and writing. But fortunately, I came back and I didn't lose the thread. I think I really felt that there was a risk. It's like, no, I'm supposed to be going away on this kind of extended writing retreat, and those were the conditions that were going to be perfect for me in which to write. Instead of which, I ended up back in Bournemouth, living with my mum, because I've sold my house and everything, doing this big life change thing, back in my childhood bedroom, which of course couldn't have been more perfect actually for then finishing, sort of writing the second half of my book. So that was interesting to me, that I actually didn't lose the flow, and I managed to keep writing. So I guess that kind of feeds into maybe what we're talking about today, and exploring this kind of, how we write and where we write, and the conditions that we set around ourselves, and then what happens when the unexpected happens, and that intention, which, hey, it's happened again. I'm not even supposed to be here right now. I'm supposed to be on an island in the Hebrides, where I had decided that I was going to spend the next 6 months and to write my second book. And then I, made the fatal mistake of coming home for Christmas to visit family and friends, and, now can't get back. But I will. But anyway, so I finished my book, which is called Falling Awake, A Heroine's Journey. And I spent 6 months writing it last year, from January up until the summer. Had a little break with it, went back, picked it up again, did a bit of a rewrite, and that took me up until really sort of the end of last year, end of November, when I then handed it over to you. It was handed over to Anna for editing, and so I'm just now at the final editing stage, and so it's due to be out and available for purchase in the spring. In April, absolutely. And so, much like you, Sarah, as well, ideas for the next book are completely bubbling away. I think for me, I've always seen this as a trilogy. I've always had in mind that this would be a trilogy for me, and the first book was very much about the kind of the context and the background, sort of the whole of, sort of everything that's got me to my current position and mindset. And my intention for the second book is to kind of continue my unfolding process, my unfolding journey with this kind of waking up, that I feel like I know I'm not alone in that 2020 has been the year of the Great Awakening. And so really continuing that, but also integrating all of actually, you know, what is going on in our world, and how we're kind of, you know, how we're living with that, how we're managing that, and how it's actually unfolding, and the impact that it's having. So what's interesting for me right now is that all my notes, you talked about, you know, you've got various notes and notebooks and everything, Sarah, and that's exactly the process I was in. All of my notes are sitting in this cottage, this uninhabited cottage in an island in the Hebrides that I can't get to. And I feel like that's kind of stopping me. I feel like it's, oh, well, I can't, you know, because all my notes and all my ideas are there. Well, which now, having heard myself say that out loud, kind of sounds ridiculous, because of course all my notes and ideas are here. And wouldn't it be interesting to pick up the writing process actually without being able to refer to those?
Maybe that's what you're meant to do. Yeah, exactly.
Well, of course, yeah, exactly. You know, if we really believe that everything works out perfectly just as it's meant to, then I'm meant to be here, my notes are meant to be there, and you know, that's how it is. So
thanks, Vikki. Thank you. So inspiring, actually, for, you know, I found it inspiring to hear, and I think it'll be inspiring for others as well who are maybe thinking about writing a book. The fact that, like, literally this time last year you were writing that first chapter, and now the editing's just been, you know, you completed it, the editing's just been completed, and it's ready to be released. I know, that's really, really amazing.
Yeah,
so, go you.
I mean, even if nobody reads it, that's a huge achievement.
Yes,
I'm just saying, everybody watching, they really do read Vikki's book, because it is fascinating. It's just such a great,
it's a great title as well. Falling Awake. Wow,
thank you. So my idea for the trilogy is that everything will be something, a heroine's journey. My idea for the second book is to call it Rebooting. I think it's something about rebooting, because I feel like I've just been completely rebooted during the last 12 months. I feel like but then it's really a remembering as well. And then my fantasy about the third book will be, it's going to be called Stepping Up, a heroine's journey. It's actually making it happen rather than just talking about it all.
Brilliant. Thanks, Vikki.
I love what you said about the notes as well, Victoria, about just having the courage to go with it, even though you know the notes are somewhere else. And that sounds just really Unbound to me. Being like, there's a note. Okay, here we go, over here now.
It's like, can I trust myself to come up with something that I didn't think about a few months ago, right? Because when you write a note, it's because you think you've just had a really good idea.
It's like,
you want to write it down so you don't forget about it. But
where are they?
Exactly.
That trust is a huge piece. Brilliant. So Anna, one of our very first authors at the Unbound Press, and now, as well as being an author, one of our editors as well, who does an amazing job. So Anna, introduce yourself.
Well, I'm very grateful to be a part of the Unbound family, both as an author and in my editing role. And I have to say, I have just finished reading Vikki's book, and it is a very good read. So I would really recommend that people get their hands on it as soon as it comes out. And how exciting to have sequels in mind as well. So that's fantastic. So back in 2018, I joined the Unbound Writing Mastermind, and then in 2019, and it's funny saying the numbers now, because it does feel like, gosh, 2019 was a while ago now.
It really was.
In September 2019, my book Desire Lines was published by the Unbound Press, and prior to that I had written predominantly fiction and had that published. Desire Lines, I've taken to calling it more than a memoir, because although it contains a lot of my personal story, which seems to be a theme amongst us today, which is lovely, it does also contain some fiction and some reflective questions for the reader. So I wanted it to be a very sort of interactive experience for the reader, and it's all about exploring and expressing our own true sexuality. So a bit like you were saying at the start, Sarah, you know, if we take away all of these limitations or expectations that living in a patriarchal system has placed upon us, if we take away all of that, all of our cultural expectations, things that we expect of ourselves or beliefs that we've inherited, and we actually tune into who we are as authentic sexual beings, where might that take us? And so Desire Lines is all about exploring some of those paths. So what does it look like when we actually follow the paths of our authentic sexuality rather than those that have been imposed upon us? Yeah. So I had been wanting to write Desire Lines for a few years, and again, I had lots of notes everywhere. I had various bits in various notebooks, and it actually took me a while to get that thread, like you described it, Vikki, you know, that thread that I could then keep following until the book was completed. And it was great to be able to do that within the container of the Unbound Writing Mastermind as well. And the other thing that was happening for me when I was writing Desire Lines was, so this was back in 2018, and it's funny, you know, talking about 2020 as a transformational year, because 2018 was a transformational year for me. My current work contract had finished. My best friend had just been diagnosed with cancer. She lives in Glasgow. I live in the southwest of England. I was traveling up and down to visit her every few weeks for her chemotherapy sessions and staying with her. And that's when I was writing Desire Lines. So in no way, shape or form were they like perfect life circumstances to be writing. And yet that was the time that I had. And that was the time that Desire Lines was birthed, was brought through. And what I'm finding now is, having gone through survived 2018, 2019, I then got very ill with gallbladder trouble and had to have surgery. So that kind of wrote off a lot of 2019 for me. So 2020 was kind of like, okay, here we go. Here's another year of changing upheaval. And I think what I'm feeling into already for this year, 2021, which sounds so futuristic, I still can't quite get my head around it. It's almost like this feeling of, okay, so there is no typical, that there is no, and I think this links really nicely with Unbound as well. You know, if there isn't a perfect set of circumstances, if we don't always have all our notes and notebooks right beside us when we want them, when we need them, if we don't always have all the time we want, how can we still write? How can we still do the writing that we personally need to do within whatever circumstances we find ourselves in? So I've got a little thing that I'm kind of hooking onto at the moment, which is because I'm writing my second book. I say writing, I think it's in development stage at the moment, because it's still very mysterious to me, but it feels like being on a treasure trail. And so my notes, my little post-it notes and my little scraps of paper feel like little clues, like somebody's laid out these clues for me. And I'm each time I find one, it's like, oh, where's this going to take me? And the way to solve the clue is to write around it. And then that kind of gives me the next step in the journey. Don't know where it's going to take me. I know some broad themes, but I really don't know what's at the end. What I'm gonna, you know, Indiana Jones, I'm gonna open up that treasure chest and I don't know what's going to be in there, but I'm excited to solve these clues, to find the next one.
Oh, I'm excited too. Every time I see you share something, and I like on Instagram, I'm like, oh yeah, this is really juicy and rich.
Thank you.
And I love how you brought through it, and it's come through, I think, you know, with each of you speaking there about, like, it wasn't just 2020 that kind of seemed to throw us a curveball. I remember the years before that, and literally at the end of every year people would be like, oh my goodness, like, I can't wait for next year. This year's just been like so tumultuous, and it feels like that is the nature of these times. So it's about allowing ourselves to write, or finding ways to write through that. I'm definitely finding that.
I love, sorry, Nicola, just to say something. I love what you just said about like allowing yourself to write through it, or like finding ways to write through it. And like, even if you're sitting and like watching this or listening to this being like, oh, I don't know about a book, you know, I don't know if I want to write a book, but just writing is a way through. It's really a pathway to staying like vaguely sane, or actually going, do you know, I don't even feel vaguely sane. Like I feel like a wild thing at the moment. And just when letting your pen come onto the paper and giving yourself that permission to be like, things feel quite fucked, I'm just going to write about it and then just see how that goes.
Yeah.
It's super healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for kind of highlighting that, Sarah, actually, because that reminds me when I was writing my second book, Unbound, which, what year was I writing that in? I don't know, 2017. So that was a transformational year for me, like the whole process of writing that book. That so much was happening, like personally. And I was working with a mentor at the time who, you know, she knew obviously I was writing the book, and there were like family health challenges. I just moved to the States, you know, there was just all of this stuff going on. And my mentor said, don't worry about the book, just write through it, just write your way through it, write for yourself, you know, without any expectation. And actually a lot of that did end up in the book, or certainly a lot of the themes that were coming through and the ideas, but just giving myself permission to just, you know, not for it to have to make any particular sense, or not to think about, oh, well, what, you know, will people get this and what value does it have? Just writing my way through it was so helpful. Absolutely. So what are the kind of themes and ideas that are inspiring each of you as we're, well, coming to the end of this first month of 2021, which does sound super futuristic. I have to, every time I'm either saying it or writing it down, I'm like, really? Is it really 2021?
No, I've sort of, what I've noticed over the last month, that I actually haven't had that for a change. And normally, you know, when you have this complete, you know, in that transition from one year to the next, and you're writing the date and you're still writing the previous year's date, that hasn't happened to me once this month, which is really unusual. And I almost feel like, now we're here. There's almost that sense of, yes, it's supposed to be 2021. I kind of feel like I've immediately connected with it straight away. Whatever that means. So it actually doesn't kind of feel futuristic to me. It feels like it's absolutely exactly, it's supposed to be 2021.
Well, it is 2020.
We've got no choice.
No, but like almost like you've caught up with yourself.
But it feels right. Do you know what I mean? It kind of feels right. Yeah, exactly. I feel like I finally, it's, you know, it's like the calendar's finally kind of caught me up.
You're obviously very futuristic.
I was here. I've been here waiting for 2021 to happen.
Come on, everyone.
Yeah. We finally kind of got to it.
Really there.
Yeah, it kind of does have that. And for me, there's a kind of theme, I think, emerging, and as I've been listening to what we've been talking about, is kind of, you know, I'm going to keep writing, not despite everything that's going on, but because of everything that's going on. And what's really inspiring me in terms of writing material is what the hell is going on. And you know, that just feels like such an opportunity to, it's so exciting, it's so unbelievable, it's everything, you know, that I kind of feel like I don't even have words for. And I was talking about this the other day. I was actually sort of writing a piece in a writing circle. I thought, actually, I don't have words to describe how I feel about what's happening. So that's a really interesting kind of the idea of writing a book or writing into it, when it feels like what's going on sort of exceeds, for me certainly, all the kind of words and language that or how I would normally express myself. Feels like it just doesn't quite hit the mark. So I need to go deeper, I need to go wider, I need to expand in order that I can then write around it, write into it.
Yeah, absolutely. that feels really courageous, like to allow yourself to do that as well. I think, you know, those times when we feel actually, I don't think I've got the words for this, and you know, to allow yourself to write anyway is incredibly powerful. Yeah, not to wait until you feel like you have it all figured out. Yeah.
And I've been feeling that I need both that kind of freedom and also a container. That's sort of what's happened for me in this first month of 2021. So the container, I've provided myself and a friend, we've set up a little writing held space together. So we spend 2 hours on a Saturday morning, and that is our kind of protected space, and we both hold the space for each other to do some writing. So that's the container. But then within that, I give myself complete freedom to explore wherever the next step on my treasure trail takes me. And that's been really important, because I think kind of needing some certainty in unpredictable times, but also not wanting to feel any pressure to produce something at this time. That, you know, as soon as I start to put pressure on saying this is going to be my second book, I feel quite restricted. But as you described, Victoria, you know, Vikki, that sense of just being able to use my writing as self-expression and self-exploration, which is what it always comes down to for me. You know, I write for myself first and foremost, because that's how I experience the world. That's how I process my world. And that's how I best share ideas and find out what I believe about things and all that kind of thing. So it's kind of different feeling for me, you know, having this set time but complete freedom within that time. And that's working so far. And I'm going to keep reviewing it as my life changes over the coming months, because there's still a lot of change on the horizon. I know that.
Oh, yeah. That's really interesting, actually, Anna, because that's something I've always kind of resisted for myself in the past, like making those set times. And I'm not working on a kind of book, a normal sort of book this year, but I'm creating a journal. That's my intention for this year. And at the beginning of the year, I started off, because it's going to be a daily journal, so I was just doing a little piece every day, and I thought, oh, that's easy, I can do that. And then very quickly realized, as I got into January and like things just got really busy, it's like, okay, I'm not going to be able to do it like a piece every day, or I could, but it's just not happening. So it's the first time I've just put like a regular appointment in my calendar, like the last Friday of every month, like in the morning, I'm just going to spend that whole morning kind of working on the journal idea. And it's not a huge chunk of time, that's one morning a month, but I think I can probably get quite a lot done. But it's just interesting to me that I've never done anything like that before, but that container feels really, really important for me. And I've been really good with like keeping that, not like sneakily booking something else in at that time, which I know is, you know, that's something that I can tend to do. So like having that boundary time, and there's a lot of there'll be a lot of freedom within that, because I'm not really quite sure what form the journal is going to take, but it just feels really, really anchoring to have that space. And for me, it feels like 2021, everything feels like it's, I don't know, there's a real fast moving energy to it. So anything we can do to support ourselves with that, I think is really, really important. How about you, Sarah?
Yeah, just reflecting on everything that people have said, really just resonating with loads of it. Definitely the piece about sort of oscillating between wanting the freedom to just do your writing when the writing wants to happen, but then also having that kind of that container, that structure, which is like, okay, if this time is here, like it's okay, I can come into this time, and then that time is completely my own within that slot of time for anything to get explored. And that's what I'm really valuing in the Unbound Mastermind at the moment, is those, you know, they're relatively short sessions, but weekly and then you use that as you wish to use that, because somehow, whether you're going to physically write or not, it's almost like all in service of your book anyway, because you are your book, or your book is you, like it's coming out of you. So if you're nurturing this being that you are, that your book is coming from, you can't help but actually be working on your book at the same time. So whether it's like writing or doing really important self-care like yoga, or for me it's nidra and reiki, like that's what's happening, that is helping me bring what wants to come from my head and my heart and my body like onto the page at a later date. So I've definitely been someone who's like really oscillated between feeling like I need to have like proper structure, and then really rebelling against that completely, being like, I don't need any structure, I'm going to be way outside the box with this. And then it's like, actually that doesn't go so well for me either when I'm too much the other way. So I'm finding that structure of, you know, just a little bit each week held in a really nice space in the mastermind, that's really working for me. And then it really plays into like the kind of structural and like patriarchal kind of ideas as well, doesn't it? Because we get taught in school, or I don't know, I can't speak for everybody, but for me it was like, right, this is your hour where you do English, and then you're creative in this hour. Now stop being creative and go to your maths lesson. I mean, maths is kind of creative if you're really good at it. Like my partner, he's a mathematician and he's like woo about maths. And I'm like, I just can't play it that way. It's not creative to me. So I've got to switch the creative brain off and do maths for an hour. And then you go and do like biology for another hour after that. And you have to switch your mind around so much when you're in school. And that's quite hard being a teenager, because teenagers actually take a while to process stuff, and we think that they don't, but they do. So you don't really learn so well when it's like this thing, then this thing, then this thing, then this thing. So I feel like I've really wanted to like give myself space around my writing to be like, oh, I've written for an hour. Now let me just do nothing and just sit back and actually process what's come through me. And then, yeah, lastly, just on the what topic is inspiring me at the moment, this weird balance, like this dichotomy between difference and division, and where's the middle ground in there? Like, where does difference and division bubble over into like radicalization, and then the impact on you as a being if you're kind of radicalizing yourself or being radicalized about something, and the human impact of that is like, oh, now we're just even more divided. Great, that's not going to go well. So I'm just exploring that in my kind of journaling at the moment.
Wow. Yeah, fascinating.
Great, juicy.
Yeah, really important as well. And you know, I want to ask the question, if somebody is watching this now and is thinking about writing a book this year, because I know at the beginning of the year a lot of people do kind of, you know, it's one of the things on their intention list or their goal list. And there's a couple of things I'd like you to, or inviting you to speak to, is one, you know, kind of what advice would you give them, but also in relation to like writing now, particularly if you're writing something personal, there is so much, or there certainly seems to be so much division. And I think it could feel extra kind of risky, really, to be sharing something personal in these times. So, yeah, what kind of guidance or encouragement would you give around that? Like if you're wanting to write something transformational and personal and put it out into the world. And I know kind of Vikki and Sarah, you're kind of at this point with your books at the moment. And Anna, you've had the experience of actually, you know, your book going out into the world. But what would you say to somebody who's thinking of doing that this year?
Well, it's interesting when you've posed the question, what has arisen for me is, yes, please, I'd like some guidance on that.
Can somebody help me?
Really, yeah, that really landed with me when you said about the division and what you've been saying, Sarah, about that, and then the sort of, because I do, and I'm just sort of realizing this now as we're speaking, that's perhaps partly what is, because I can make all the excuses, well, my notes are all, you know, somewhere else, so therefore I've got to wait until I get back there before I can pick it up again. But how much of that is me just actually avoiding actually getting on with it, because in a way this does feel, even though I've already been through it once with one book, which is just one massive disclosure, it feels like this comes with my ideas about my second book comes with a different kind of risk, because it feels like I will, and what I want to do, what my intention is, to write into something that I know is controversial, and it will divide, you know, people will have a reaction to it. And I want that. I mean, of course, that's the definition of what you stand for, Nicola. And, you know, we know that's a great thing. And but it does feel, feels risky. And I think I'm just kind of realizing that now as we're speaking. So yeah, if any of you have any advice, that would be really great.
I mean, do you have a sense of, and I know you're asking this question, but as you're speaking about it, what would feel supportive for you?
Well, I think just the fact that I've just acknowledged that, and the fact that I've just said it out loud, that in itself is just suddenly feels helpful. It's like, yes, of course this is difficult. Of course you're sort of sitting on the edge, looking out to, it's like, can I do this? Do I really want to do this? What's going to be the consequences of me doing this? But at the same time, I know I can't not do it.
Well, that's what I was going to say. What would be the consequences of not doing it?
Oh, awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I'm already kind of, you know, in that process of being in the kind of divide, and you know, the consequences of that, and the losses involved, and you know, that's what happens with transformation, and that's what happens with kind of standing up and speaking up, is that you know, there are sacrifices to make along the way. And that's all part of the heroine's journey.
Oh, exactly. It says it in the title of your book.
Exactly. So
And having had the privilege of reading your book, Vikki, I completely get it. And I also had that experience with sharing my own personal stories in Desire Lines, a lot of which are about my own sexuality and my own body, which, you know, can be a very divisive thing. I talk about being a queer woman. I talk about being involved in kink, these kind of things, which can be very separating of people. And I think the two pieces of advice I'd have in general, one would be to write for yourself first and foremost. And then once it's written, make the decision about whether it's something you want to share with other people or not, but for yourself first and foremost. And then the second thing would be, you know, you just spoke about the potential sacrifices that come from transformation and from standing up and from using your voice. I agree. And I also think what surprised me was almost the opposite. So the number of allies that I found, the number of women, particularly women, who have come to me and said that resonated with me. And these are women who I wouldn't have looked at and said, we have something in common. But we obviously do. And so to find those allies and to know that something that I've written and shared has resonated and assisted transformation or had an impact or whatever, or even just in, you know, what I always wanted to do was to make an invitation. You know, here's an invitation for you, the reader, to explore something of your own story. Because when do we ever get the time? We do, because we make the time. But, you know, in general, when do we ever get the time to really explore our own story and to find out what's important to us and to understand ourselves that bit better? And, you know, we might think, oh, we do that in therapy or we do that in different ways. And for me, writing is like, I mean, therapy, maybe cathartic, yes, but ultimately that opportunity to express myself is what's key. So and in doing that, finding other people who then have used their voices, even if it's just coming back to me and saying, that bit, when you said that, I felt this, or having read that, I now do this, or whatever it might be, or having read that, I now know it's okay not to do this. you know, to have that, to be in that position of choice, because that was the other thing that was really important for me, like particularly around our sexuality, having choice. And so for me, you know, writing for myself, then choosing who gets to read that, who do I share that with. And I made the decision that I would publish it, and therefore I don't have control over who reads it. But there is within that vulnerability, there is also a trust that for those people to whom my writing matters, it will hopefully be a positive experience. And for those people who don't get it, hopefully it will never even get on their radar.
Exactly.
No, it just won't be for them.
Yeah,
So it won't
Exactly.
come to them. Yeah.
Totally.
Thank you so much, Anna. Yeah, I totally had goosebumps when you were talking about that. And yeah, I feel that, you know, sometimes we imagine when we put a book out there, like literally everybody's going to read it, and that everyone we've ever known is going to kind of be reading. And people generally are, like, you know, no, certain people are attracted to your book and your writing, and for other people it's almost like it's visible, you know, they just can't see it. So a lot of the fears that we have a lot of the time, you know, that they're not real, although, you know, obviously that, you know, there can be division, we can experience criticism, but I think, you know, when we come together in groups like this, it makes it a lot easier, when you know that you're within community.
So important. You know, I haven't been in the mastermind for that long. Like, I think I signed up at the end of November, but just having people who you don't even like necessarily know that well, but people that are about, like, who are on your radar, and you know that there's kind of similar little bits of threads that are similarities in what people are writing about and their life experience, and definitely within the kind of umbrella of Unbound is like there's a running theme here. So you've sort of got a I guess, like a kind of friendly ears to hear what you're saying and friendly eyes to read your words with. But I think as well, for me, like I was writing my first book for like my former self when I really needed that book. There was no book that I could find like it. And like writing about rape is like, you know, it's again like so odd. When I was attacked, I was sure that I had this big Belisha beacon on my head that said like victim, or like I've been raped, or like I'm dirty, or I'm shameful, or something like this. Like everybody could see it. And people can't see it. But then when I started writing my book again, like a number of years on, I was like, oh my God, people are going to see this about me. People are going to see that stuff was done to me. And people were going to see like, God, why couldn't she stop it? And God, why did she go back to that person? And why didn't she speak out before? And like all those thoughts that are, you think are old thoughts that are only specific to the interim time having been attacked, they come back. And so when I was writing like last year being like, I'm processing stuff for myself as well. So the writing process, when it became something which is, you know, it's very personal, and there are a lot of divisive opinions out there about rape and how come it happens. And there's people out there who also say there's no such thing. It's a divisive topic. And it's like the only one that matters in that moment is you that you're writing for. Because for all the people that are going to have like oppositional stuff to say, like they're allowed to say it, that's fine. But there's people who also really need to read what you're putting down because they're like you and they need you at that point, because there wasn't anybody writing this stuff when I needed it. So yeah.
Wow. Thanks, Sarah.
Pleasure.
Thank you to each of you for being brave and kind of expressing yourself through these books and sharing your stories. I definitely really appreciate it, and appreciate that each one of you are part of the Unbound Press. And community is like a massive theme that's coming through for me this year as well, like even more so. It was in 2020, but definitely this year. I can't believe the time has gone. I knew we managed to do 45 minutes. No problem at all. But before we finish, what's the best way for people to connect with each of you? For those watching, for those listening, who'd like to follow your work and find out more about your books, what's the best way for them to do that?
I would send people to my website, which is annasansom.com. Just check the spelling of Sansom because it's maybe not what you expect. And from there, it links to my email list. It links to my social media. There's a lot of my writing on my website, on my blog. So it will really give you a flavour of who I am and what I write about and why that's important to me.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Anna.
Yeah, I'd also be saying to people to have a look at my website, which is predominantly, it's my website for yoga teaching. But I think it's fair to say that people get a definite vibe about like who I am, and then also my blog is on there as well. So my yoga business is called You're Enough Yoga. So it's you'renoughoyoga.com without an apostrophe in there. So it's like all one word. Yeah, and you'll find my mailing list, which is on there, and some meditations and some footage of me teaching. So if you want to get your yoga mat out as well and have a bit of a move of your body in a You're Enough kind of way, that's what you'll find on there. And the Insta links and all of that stuff as well.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yep, so for me, my brand new website, which just went live last week. So yeah, go and check it out. And that's victoriasmisek.com. And definitely check the spelling of Smisek, S-M-I-S-E-K. Yeah, it's all on there. Yeah. Everything I could think of is on there.
It is, it's gorgeous. Wonderful.
I like it.
Yeah, and as ever, you know, you can find out about all of our authors and what we're up to at the Unbound Press on our website, theunboundpress.com. And if you are feeling the call to write a book this year, let us know, because we're always interested to hear about your writing plan. So thank you all for joining me today. It's been such a great
pleasure. Thank you, Nicola. Thank you for holding space, and thank you for everything you do. And you know, I think something I've realized just as we've been talking about, you know, trusting in the process, that those who are meant to read our books will read our books. And I think it's your, you know, you're the vehicle to that, and it's what Unbound represents. It kind of, there's almost a safeguarding in that, and it just feels like you run with the absolute law of nature and just law of attraction in a way that a traditional publishing, you know, process just wouldn't. Would be totally different. So thank you.
Agreed.
Thank you, Nicola.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's such a joy to be doing this. And yeah, like I said, thank you so much. And yeah, we'll be back again next month for another episode of Unbound Live. So we'll see you then. Bye.
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 Bye, ladies. Thank you.